Coming up on Tech News Weekly, it's me, Jason Howell, my co-host Mikah Sargent in studio, like literally sitting next to each other. And it's strange to be in real life, but it's awesome. So we're going to talk all about Amazon's big virtual assistant developer conference. Also, Right to Repair got a huge boost by the FTC this week. Akamai's big DNS outage, we talk a little bit about that, just breaking before the show. The next Wear OS version, along with Samsung, gets a new name, and you won't believe what it is. That's coming up next on Tech News Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 193, recorded Thursday, July 22nd, 2021. This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. With the world starting to reopen, you want to make sure that your customers' data is up to date. Try Melissa's APIs in the developer portal. It's easy to log on, sign up, and start playing in the API sandbox 24/7. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit.
And by PlexTrack, the powerful yet simple security management platform that helps you to get the real cybersecurity work done. With PlexTrack, you'll streamline your assessments, analytics, and reporting. Visit plextrack.com/twit and claim your free month. Hello, and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news. I'm Mikah Sargent.
I'm Jason Howell, and I'm really weirded out right now because I see you on the screen, which is the way I'm used to seeing you, but then I look to my right, and there you are in person. It's really weird.
I know, it is.
But it's awesome at the same time.
It's been surprisingly energizing in being back at the studio.
Totally agree.
And I had the realization that separating work from home life is a positive thing.
It's actually a good thing to do that. Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe I'll actually get my bedroom back. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, instead of climbing over tables to get into place. Yeah.
My wife actually used that last night for a meeting. She was like, it was her first time ever. She was like, how have you done this for a year and a half?
Just in this back corner. Yeah. Well, we're back. The studio's back. We've got lots of folks here to help us make things work and press all the buttons, and we are pumped to kick things off. So just yesterday, I believe it was, Amazon held an event, and it is an event that I am going to spell out because that's what I do when I talk about this voice assistant on Smart Tech Today. It is the ALEXA Live 2021 event. During this event, Amazon talked about lots of stuff to do with ALEXA, its voice assistant. So we can call it Amazon's voice assistant if we want to. And many of the new features that are going to be coming and the developers in particular can take advantage of. One of my favorite thinkers in the world is joining us today to help us kind of digest everything that happened at the event. Carolina Milanese, welcome to the show from Creative Strategies.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're happy to have you here. So I, of course, knew that you would be covering this event or, watching this event live. And you actually have been a great source whenever it comes to some of the stuff that Amazon's been working on. So I was really happy to get you on the show to talk about this today. Can you first talk about what ALEXA Live is in terms of some of the, because Amazon holds a lot of events at a given year. What was the focus of this one? And by the way, if you need to say the word, we can always have it edited out later, but if you could say Amazon's assistant, that is super helpful.
I will do my best because I went around the house and just muted everything, so I wouldn't have that issue.
We expect everyone who listens and watches this show to do that every single time they listen and watch, so it's not too much to ask.
No, exactly. Well, it was about the assistant, and it was about both updating some of the features so that the interactions that we as consumer have with the assistant is more natural and richer. But it was mostly about developers. So the people out there that develop skills for the assistant. And what is interesting is, of course, the two things are very linked together. And, when you're talking about the assistant per se, is about making it smarter, having it work on multiple devices, be more proactive. And really, for me, it was the moment when Amazon shifted what the assistant is from a voice assistant to an ambient assistant. So ambient computing was a big topic during the event.
Okay, so then let's dig into that, because it used to be, and I imagine this actually still happens, you can ask Alexa kind of what it wants to be when it grows up, and it says, I want to be the computer from Star Trek. And that kind of continues to seem to be the goal of the company. So when we talk about switching from a voice assistant to an ambient assistant, could you maybe define for us what is a voice assistant, what is an ambient assistant, and then how do the two differ?
Yeah, at the beginning, I always argued that Amazon was limited, and that limitation, which was the lack of a smartphone in the market, freed them to really embrace voice as the main way to interact with the assistant. That was what really drove consumers to not interact expecting a screen all the time, and also maybe breaking that really strong relationship that we have with our smartphones, because they're always with us. Once that step was done, and you're starting to use the assistant not just on a smart device, but with a TV, with a speaker, with your oven and washing machine and what have you, you started to think about the computing part, so the brain versus the voice being all around you. And that's really what ambient computing is the idea that as a user, you're splitting your computing need throughout different devices. And the way that you interact with them changes depending on what device you're interacting with. There might be a device that has a screen, and so you do take advantage of the screen. You might ask a question and the answer is displayed to you instead of spoken to you. If a device doesn't have a screen, then that's where the assistant will come in with the voice. There are even gestures now that come into this relationship, if you like. And so it's a much richer interaction that you have to get to the kind of things that you want to do. And apparently people want to do a lot of gaming, especially during the pandemic, with the assistant that remains nameless.
That's interesting, the gestural interfaces. And, you talked about how Amazon kind of had this. It was almost a brilliant limitation they gave themselves in making the Echo devices, the first ones, where you didn't have a display to rely on. And so you had to use voice to do as much of the answering or responding as you possibly could. And then later on, they came out with devices like the Echo Shows that they have now, and that kind of added on to the experience. So when you talk about gestural control, is this something that's like it's one of the built-in cameras gestural control? Is this on-screen touch gestural control? How does that work?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the idea of touch, and so interacting with the content by touching the screen, but also there are cameras that detect where you are. And so, for instance, if you're cooking and you have a camera that can follow you, depending whether you're at the sink or you're at the stove, so that the content that you get to see is always where you need it to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Now, this is, of course, a conference that is focused on developers first and foremost, as opposed to kind of being a consumer conference where you see a lot of things that pan out there. Did Amazon highlight any developers in particular that are working on skills or upcoming plans that they have with these skills? I know that can sometimes be a way to get other developers excited by hearing about these tools and knowing what developers are already doing.
Yeah, it was interesting because they did do, some name dropping, and they had a couple of cameos from Sony, from Tile. They mentioned McDonald's. But what was interesting to me was maybe the time that it was most obvious that they chose developers and brands across the globe. I think that maybe in the past we've been a bit more US centric, whereas, they really tried to showcase that the assistant is not just a US phenomenon, which means that from a developer perspective, the opportunity is maybe much bigger than they are expecting. And that's true for the features that they released and the language supports that they have introduced as well for some of those features.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, there's one that I was a little bit curious about, and I refrained from being snarky about this event, but it's been my experience that anytime a company, be it Apple, be it Spotify, be it, in this case, Amazon, tries to do some sort of social network for musicians or artists, it almost always is only the musicians or artists that they either pay or work with up front who end up using that service, and then afterwards nobody takes advantage of it. So I'm curious, from your perspective as an analyst, Amazon, and maybe you'll remember what the service is called, but essentially they had a way for artists to be able to share what they're working on and share new stuff. And it's essentially a social network for music artists. What's your take on that? And do you think that Amazon, due to the fact that it has these smart speakers in folks' home, maybe has more of a chance to make this work? Or if it was just kind of like we're doing all of this, so let's do that too?
I have to admit that without being snarky, we can be skeptical. And so that was the announcement that I was most skeptical about. They started out talking about the importance of entertainment. And I thought actually they had some interesting new features, like the opportunity, they said they work with iHeartRadio in the way of allowing listeners to make a song request. We used to dial into the radio to do that, and now you'll be able to do it through the assistant. But then they got to this part of, the artists are going to be able to share their preference, share some playlist. This maybe I can get, but actually the interaction with the fan for me seems a little bit, to your point, maybe artificial. And also from an analyst perspective, I definitely don't have the impression that consumers are out there asking for this. I think there's maybe something in the voice that might be interesting. So if these interactions are in the voice of the artist, consumers might be a bit more inclined to have that experience because it feels a bit more personal than not if it was just done through, text as an example.
Yeah. Then let's talk about another big thing. This was one that I feel like is a little late in coming, but glad that it's here. Amazon announced a masculine presenting voice for Alexa. Curious your thoughts on that in general. Do you think it is the right time to do it? Should it have done it sooner? And do you think that this will be something that consumers are going to take advantage of?
Yeah, it's interesting because somebody was asking me as I was tweeting yesterday, do you always personified, that's the word, the assistant? And it's interesting that because I don't do it with all the assistants. I definitely do it with Amazon Assistant. I do it with Apple's Assistant, but I don't do it for anybody else. And so, there's definitely a relationship that you create with someone that, even if it's artificial in this sense, that you interact on a regular basis. Male voices have always been there. At the very beginning of this market, there was a lot of discussion, as it always is, why it has to be a woman, right? Why has it to be female? There's that servitude that comes with it, and the discussion that, why can it not be a male? Interesting, IBM is the only one that has Watson and is a male assistant. It also seems to be the one with the biggest brain. So, there's definitely discussions that we can have there. I don't know if you're calling something Alexa, but and I said it.
That's okay.
I was doing so well.
You were doing that's okay.
That having a male voice makes a lot of sense, unless your wake word is the one that matches the device. And then that might actually make sense.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, there was a lot, of course, that Amazon covered at the event, and we'll start to see these things roll out as Amazon begins to roll them out. But I do want to thank you for taking the time today to join us and talk a little bit about the ALEXA live event. Of course, folks can check out your work can check out your work at creativestrategies.com. But if they want to follow you online and check out what you're doing, where should they go to follow you?
They can find me on Twitter at Caro, _Milanesi, Milanesi.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Up next, I thought this was pretty good news. Right to repair got a really big boost by the FTC. And so we're going to talk with the folks at iFixit, Taylor Dixon, to be specific about that. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. With the world obviously starting to reopen, we're like visual proof of that here in the studio. You're going to want to get reacquainted with your customers as well, not just your coworkers, which means you need to make sure that your customers' data hasn't gone bad. And did you know that 30% of customer data goes bad each and every year? So now that you know that, you can stop throwing your money away. And the way you do that is to let Melissa actually help you. Melissa makes sure your data is accurate and current so you reach the right customers. That's what it's all about. Their tools have helped businesses maintain fresh data for more than 35 years. And that right there is why over 10,000 businesses trust the address experts with a renewal rate of over 92%. Obviously, companies love Melissa, and you're going to love Melissa too. You can verify addresses, emails, phone numbers, names as well, all in real time with Melissa. Melissa's global address verification system and service verifies addresses for more than 240 countries and territories at the point of entry. So this happens in real time. It happens in the field as they're typing. It just appears there instantaneously. If you're tired of having duplicate customer information in your database, which you should be because duplicate customer information is noise, with Melissa's data matching, you can eliminate clutter and duplicates. That's going to increase your accuracy of the database that you're using and reduce postage and mailing costs. So it has a very tangible impact to your bottom line. Get the information that completes your customer profiles better as well. You can add consumer demographic information to your records, things like marital status or social media handles, which are super valuable. Melissa's flexible deployment options offer different platforms to suit any preference, any business size or budget. They have flexible on-prem web service, secure FTP processing, and software as a service delivery options as well. Melissa also has their new Lookups app that's on iOS, of course, and on Google on Android to search addresses, names, and more at your fingertips. Melissa continually undergoes independent security audits, and that's just a reinforcement of their commitment to data security, to privacy, and compliance requirements. So SOC 2, HIPAA, GDPR compliant, all that stuff is covered. And Melissa's Global Support Center offers 24/7 world-renowned support if you sign up for a service level agreement, and you can inquire about that today. Melissa is still supporting communities and qualifying essential workers during COVID-19. We're not out of the woods there, so Melissa continues to help. See if your organization qualifies for 6 months of free service by applying online at melissa.com. And we would also like to really quick congratulate Melissa for being named a leader in address verification and data quality by G2 Crowd in their spring 2021 report. That's awesome. Good going, Melissa. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Try Melissa's API in the developer portal. It's easy to log on. You can sign up and start playing in the API sandbox 24/7. So right away you can get started today with 1,000 records clean for free. Just go to melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And we thank Melissa for their continued support of Tech News Weekly and the TWiT network. All right. Right to repair, it's been getting a lot of time in the press. I feel like lately we've been seeing a lot about right to repair in the press anyways. The long-standing thing that everybody hears about, is of course like the John Deere thing, but it goes much wider than that. It goes down to the smartphones that we carry. There's a lot of energy behind this, and now it's reaching into Washington, D.C. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is committing its resources to the effort. And joining us to talk about the significance of this, is this just like a statement that happens and then we forget about it, or is this something meaningful? Is Taylor Dixon from iFixit. Welcome back to the show, Taylor.
Thank you for having me, Jason. I'm so excited to be here today. This is crazy. I am really excited to get into it, but honestly, I can't believe some of this stuff. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's awesome right there. So before we dive into this policy statement that the FTC came out with, why now more than ever is right to repair so critical?
Great question. Well, I guess a really quick primer on right to repair. Right to repair is just the idea that you should be able to repair anything that you own. So your phone, your tractor, your refrigerator, anything that you buy, you should be able to repair. And the manufacturer of that device shouldn't be stopping you from repairing that yourself or taking it to another person to repair. And that's so important right now because, frankly, the manufacturers are trying to stop you from repairing the things that you own. So, we can get into examples in a little bit, but just your phone, for example, manufacturers have taken a number of steps to make it difficult, not impossible, but more difficult to get that phone fixed so that you will just buy a new one. And honestly, it's been working. So that's why this is so unbelievably cool that the FTC and the government are finally stepping in to do something about it.
If you had to name like a couple of manufacturers, or maybe you don't want to, but I'm curious to know, like, I'm
happy to talk to you.
I'm sure you are. I mean, you guys kind of you make your business around repairing phones, so you would know more than anybody which are the phones that are easier, or that landscape is like made easier for someone when they want to repair their phone versus the ones that are really difficult. What would be at the top of the list? Maybe a couple of manufacturers that are at the top of the list of the most difficult to repair when. From a resources perspective, but also have been vocal about like, hey, we don't want people to repair these phones.
Great question. So most vocal probably is Apple. Apple's very vocal about, they hedge it very wisely. They're very careful about it. They say that third-party repair is dangerous. Third-party repair is unsafe. Your data will be corrupted or lost or stolen. So Apple's pretty vocal about it. And in the design of some of their products, they take steps to make it difficult, or they just don't prioritize it at all. In their iPhones, for example, they kind of link parts together so that you can't replace one part without another part having a problem or making a fuss. So Apple does that. Samsung kind of just chooses when and where to care about repair. They usually just don't make any effort to be green or repair friendly. And then there's John Deere, which you mentioned. John Deere is also kind of in the Apple court where they are against it, but they make claims that it's unsafe or that their data is proprietary. And so if they give you access to what you need to repair the device, then you will have this proprietary information, which just isn't true, which is what the FTC found, and we can get into that.
Yeah. Let's do that right now. So, and I should also mention iFixit. You all, took part in this effort to really bring a number of signatures in to the FTC, and apparently it has worked. So, what is all the work that you have done with others behind the scenes to kind of make this happen?
So we have done a ton of work. I don't know all of it. Our U.S. policy lead, Carrie Sheehan, she is a new hire as of last year. She has been doing amazing work on the ground, just in all of these back rooms, kind of making these things happen. But I do have the rough timeline. So like you said, we did work to get these signatures delivered to the FTC, but it started way back in 2019 when they kind of were putting out feelers and just saying like, hey, what is this about? They didn't know about it. They were trying to figure it out. So naturally, we gave them all the information that we had, and we helped them to figure out what was going on. We delivered the signatures, and then in May, they came forward with a nixing the fix report, which was basically after we had given them information back in 2019, they did a bunch of research on their own and came to the conclusion that all of the things that these manufacturers are saying about repair or about third-party repair, that it's dangerous, that they will lose proprietary information, or that data is a problem. The FTC basically did their own research. They found that all those claims are basically false. And they said that in this nixing the fix report. And after that, earlier this month, President Joe Biden signed the executive order, which called on the FTC, basically like, you have this data, now do something about this, and the executive order was a large umbrella which covered a lot of anti-competitive behavior that he was seeing, or that everyone has been seeing. But they did specifically call out right to repair in the agriculture segment, so John Deere, and with electronic devices, so like your cell phone. And then after that executive order, earlier this week, the FTC came forward with their policy statement, which basically was them saying, okay, we got this executive order, and the first thing we're going to do is hone in on right to repair.
All right, so they're honing in on right to repair, and they've essentially issued a policy statement. What kind of teeth does that have, and what does it call for exactly? Like, does it get very specific as far as kind of what they expect of companies, or is that coming further down the line?
So this is where it gets exciting. I was not expecting any of this. I don't know where to start. So it does have a lot of specifics in it, way more specifics than I was expecting, to be sure. Some of the things that they specifically mentioned in this policy statement is they have a whole list of, basically, I see this policy statement as them saying, okay, we know about this problem. We are going to start devoting resources to address this problem. And the problems specifically that they mention in the report are imposing physical restrictions to repair in devices. So the example they use is adhesive. In most smartphones, manufacturers have been choosing to use adhesive instead of screws or clips, which makes repair a lot more difficult because adhesive is just awful to deal with. And a lot of people don't have adhesive, but they do have a screwdriver. So if it were just a matter of screws and clips, you could take apart your phone. But the adhesive oftentimes is what people are afraid of when they're doing a repair. So really cool. They call out adhesives. They call out limiting the availability of parts, manuals, and diagnostic software, which is another huge one. iFixit was started kind of for this reason. We create repair manuals because manufacturers aren't doing that. So they're calling for that. They call out design that makes repairs less safe. So a lot of manufacturers use adhesive specifically on the battery, which is really unsafe because you have to pry up this adhesive, and the battery is basically an explosive when it's charged, and so you're prying against this explosive thing, and that's just extremely unsafe, and it's a design choice that manufacturers are making across the board. So that's one, and then there are a bunch more, but the gist is that they are being extremely specific here, which is not what I was expecting and is why I'm so excited.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, all you have to do is read through any iFixit kind of tear down, and you will, I would say 75% of the time, see some reference to the adhesive that you discovered under the hood and how frustrating, or the byproducts of trying to remove that particular piece. Most people don't have the heat gun to like loosen up the glue and all that kind of stuff, so you can really do some damage. The question that I have, like, this is all really good. I love how specific it is, and I love especially that you guys are all excited about it, because it seems to be speaking to exactly what you got involved in it in the first place. But if they're calling out adhesives just as one example, what is the potential impact that has to the designs of, when we take phones, for example? Adhesives, yes, might be a quick and easy way to just secure parts together, but it might also be a way for like slimmer form factors versus using like screws and stuff. Does it make that much of a difference as far as how the design of the phone, or companies just have to get more creative and use the parts that are easier to take apart, and that's just the way it is?
So I think companies will definitely have to get more creative, and there are some companies who have been creative. Apple, for example, as much grief as we give them, they use adhesive to keep the screen on the phone, but it is extremely forgiving adhesive. And the main way that your screen on your iPhone is clipped to the rest of your phone is clips and screws. So, for example, they already have the problem solved. They're basically just using adhesive for waterproofing in that place. And so that's okay. And I think the FTC will probably get really specific about adhesive and the use of adhesive. And I imagine they'll only call it out where it's like a barrier to repair or a safety problem. But manufacturers will definitely need to be more creative in solving these kind of design problems. I don't foresee this taking us backward in any sense. Like, I don't think that because of this, devices are going to be thicker or less cool, less sleek. I think it's just going to be, companies will actually have to think about this. But every time we have seen a company think about repair or think about designing a product carefully to be disassembled, they usually knock it out of the park, and it really has almost no compromises. It's just a matter of planning with that in mind.
Right. And reason, kind of the poking stick in the back to say, yeah, you need to do this now. It's time. So, at the end of all, well, we're not at the end of this, but where we are right now, if you were to kind of look forward through your rose-tinted glasses and kind of spell out the best case scenario based on what we know right now coming from the FTC, like what does this lead to that we're going to be talking about a year from now, hopefully?
So what I hope is that this will scare manufacturers and they will just start doing this kind of on their own right now. And so that will get us to the future more quickly. But I foresee a future where new phones, new laptops, new tractors are designed to be repaired. It wasn't always the case that they weren't. A lot of old products were designed to be repaired. So it's just us getting back to the past, really. But rose-colored, I just see that coming back, and you being able to take your device to any third-party repair shop and them having all of the tools that they need to fix it, all of the knowledge that they need to fix it, and that repair being economically feasible, and you not just having to buy a whole new device.
Excellent. Well, I really hope that we are kind of well on our way. Like you, I guess I was kind of surprised by this news. I mean, pleasantly surprised by this news. Just to see, also, you know, you guys mentioned in the post the bipartisan support for this, which is, I feel like in this day and age, a surprise in and of itself.
Extremely rare, yeah.
But it's really good to see the energy behind Right to Repair. And feels very, you know, obviously it's a pro-consumer kind of wave, and always happy to see that, especially with these devices that we use so very often. Having the choice, you know, so there was someone in chat that's like, yeah, you know what, I still would opt to take my device into a repair shop. And I think that at the end of the day, the point in my mind is you have the choice to do that. If you want to take it into a repair shop, you can. Or if you are just of the mind to tackle it yourself, you have the ability to do that too. And there aren't these like unnecessary hurdles in the way that are kind of anti-competitive.
And that's all we're asking for. You hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah. Right on. Well, Taylor Dixon, always a pleasure getting you back on the show. Thank you for carving out some time with us today. iFixit.com, of course, excellent resource for people who do want to repair their phones or see how repairable a phone is before they buy one, as well as a bunch of other types of technology, laptops and everything. If people want to follow you online, Taylor, where can they find you?
People can find me on our YouTube channel. I'm always in the comments of our YouTube videos, or on Twitter at Taylor C. Dixon.
Awesome. Thank you again, Taylor. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
All right, folks. Up next, we've got our stories of the week. But first, I do want to take a break to tell you about PlexTrack, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. PlexTrack is the security management platform that brings you better reports, deeper assessments, and more insights. Do you spend hours and hours reporting security issues and feel like it's getting you nowhere? Are you buried in data but still can't get a full picture of your security posture to prioritize remediation effort? Well, we've got the solution for you. PlexTrack empowers continuous assessment, automated workflow, and effective collaboration between teams to help cybersecurity professionals do more in less time. Create assessment reports in half the time and centralize your remediation efforts across all scans, assessments, and audits through powerful risk visualizations, scanner and ticketing integrations, and enhanced analytics to effectively communicate risks in real time. Whether red or blue, there is a PlexTrack for every security professional to save time and get the right work done. Red teams can import findings from numerous vulnerability scanners, include screenshots and videos with auto formatting, create customized templates and export to Word with one click, and streamline the report writing process to deliver better reports faster. And blue teams can customize internal and external assessment questionnaires, synchronize findings with task management tools like Jira Cloud, assign findings to team members and track status over time, and provide attestation of security posture with robust analytics. Want to learn more? Well, in-person events are back for PlexTrack, and the PlexTrack team will be in Las Vegas for Hacker Summer Camp 2021. For those visiting Sin City for Black Hat and DEF CON, give a shout out to PlexTrack on social if they will see you there. Connect with PlexTrack at their hospitality suite and open house to see how PlexTrack fits your unique use case, or simply challenge your skills with their purple teaming CTF. Try PlexTrack for free for 1 month and see how it can change your life as a security professional. Simply go to plextrack.com/twit and claim your free month. That's plextrack.com/TWIT. And of course, we thank PlexTrack for their support. Thank you, PlexTrack, for sponsoring Tech News Weekly. All right, up first, this is a doozy that took place this morning, and I kind of just heard about it as I was coming in to the office. The big outage, internet outage, kind of across the landscape. There were banks, brokerage firms, the PlayStation Network, the Steam Store, loads of different places. Allied Bank, Fidelity, Airbnb, tons. British Airways. I saw FedEx was involved.
LastPass.
Clearly, LastPass, that's kind of a scary one. Clearly, there was something big going down that caused an issue for folks to be able to access sites or access certain portions of the sites. Turns out Akamai, who is a sponsor on the TWiT network, full disclosure there, was suffering an outage with its DNS Edge product that seems to be behind this. Now, Akamai did send out a tweet saying this was not a cyber attack. This was just an outage, but it kind of, as The Verge pointed out in its article, points to, or not points to, but is just a reminder that as decentralized as we think the web might be, it's not really a decentralized network when you've got huge players in the space who serve as the backbone of the internet in different ways. With this system, Akamai is known for being a CDN, a content distribution network, but also it has a DNS product that is. You have to kind of think of DNS as sort of a phone book. So you will you go to a website and you type in, say, theverge.com. But when you go to that website, you're actually going to an IP address that exists somewhere. And so there's a system in between you and that website that sees that you've written in theverge.com and then takes that and goes, that actually results in this address that's an IP, and then you go to that website via that IP address. The DNS that's in between is the one that's kind of handling that. And Akamai has a really cool service that is helpful in DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks, and other kinds of methods of trying to get sites to not be accessible or services to be accessible, where they kind of run that DNS more locally to the system, which can help in some ways. But if there's an issue or that goes down, then it can be a problem for folks to be able to actually gain access to a site, or as we've seen in some cases, it's just different parts of a site. So not being able to book a flight, etc. There were quite a few different outages across the whole thing, and The Verge had pointed out to some other things that had happened where there's Fastly's CDN service that took down Reddit, Twitch, and even The Verge. Amazon Web Services has had an outage in the past that's caused issues. So there are quite a few. And then it just so happened that at the same time as this was going on, there were some 911 systems that went down. But from the reports that have come in this early, it seems that those were unrelated and had to do with some other issues. So it's hard to know, of course, so early on in the process, whether what outages at a given time were the result of this issue with Akamai's services. But at the end of the day, that is something that you may have experienced this morning as you were trying to access your bank or the PlayStation Network or some other service. Couldn't see what FedEx packages were rolling in or not rolling in. Could have been the cause of Akamai's system not being down. Now, Akamai reported on edgedns.status.akamai.com that the issue has been resolved. This was posted about an hour ago, July 22nd, 2021, 1709 UTC. The incident has been mitigated. Dun, dun, dun. At first, they were investigating it at about 1609 UTC, and so it took about an hour, or precisely an hour, according to this, to resolve the issue for Akamai's Edge, DNS, and GTM. I'm not sure what GTM is, but we did talk about the Edge DNS service. So that's what's going on. I mean, ultimately, this is just kind of like there's not a whole lot of conversation to have. It is really just kind of a reporting on. But
and it just happened.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If there's any real deep information to be found, we're not going to hear about it immediately. Although Akamai, like you said, has admitted that it's not the result of a hacking or cybersecurity breach,
right?
As far as we know right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's hopeful that is the case. That we're not working with some sort of cyber attack.
Yeah.
Given all the different cyber attacks that we've seen, and
given the impact. I mean, talk about. I mean, I realize they're saying that it isn't, but talk about a great way to make a large impact, right? And it always seems like DNS is the thing that this happens with, right?
Yeah.
When these things happen, you could always point to the DNS. There was a similar incident that happened last month with a Fastly CDN outage that took down Amazon, Reddit, Twitter, Spotify. I mean, at the end of the day, these things just happen. And, there is no service that is 100% secure or protected from these things. That's why they always say, 9 nines of security or whatever it is, 99.9999999. So you're saying there's a chance. At the end of that, there's always a chance. There's always a possibility that something's going to happen here. At the end of the day, how swiftly, how fast is it resolved when it happens? And I mean, just looking at this, it seems like Akamai did a pretty darn good job of resolving this pretty quickly.
Sometimes it's kind of it can be very complex, the situation, and it can, one tumble turns into 95 tumbles, and suddenly everything's down. So it is a little refreshing whenever it's like, oh, we've got this one issue that we can resolve, and we're good to go. This is something that we'll be keeping an eye on, because I'm sure there will be more reporting as this goes on. But I think this is going to result in folks going, and don't you forget, the internet isn't as decentralized as you think.
It isn't perfect. Yeah. Nothing in this world is perfect. One thing to remember that a lot of sites reporting on this point to a site called downdetector.com, which, I mean, as far as like resources on the internet, it's a good site to know. It's just a great way to kind of take a look at a glance at some of the top websites and understand and know what's going on. Are they down? How long have they been down? To see all of them, affected at once. So if that wasn't already on your radar, downdetector.com, great resource for tracking this sort of thing.
All right. That's that.
All right. Coming up, new details in Google's upcoming wearables refresh. So, I've been out for a couple of weeks. So it's like I return and I realize that in some ways things have moved really fast. And there's a lot happening in technology in that time. And I feel like I'm always catching up. And then in other ways, it's like, oh, wow, it's moving at a snail's pace. I suppose this story falls into the latter. But still, it's good to know that we're working towards something. So what am I talking about? Google and Samsung announced in May their united effort of Android wearables. They announced this at Google I/O, the virtual event, that basically Google and Samsung, and then of course Google's recently acquired Fitbit, would all be working together to work on a redesigned version of Wear OS, which, I mean, you're on the Apple side, and you've got the best wearable, in my opinion. The Apple Watch is just a phenomenal wearable. It's proven itself time and time again. It's the best in the business as far as I'm concerned. When you're looking for a true, fully functional smartwatch,
multi-purpose wearable,
absolutely. The downside for it, of course, for anyone who's on Android, is that the Apple Watch doesn't work for Android devices. Understandably so. But still a bummer. So people on the Android side are always kind of hoping for, something that works for them, that they can, lift up on a pedestal and say, see, we've got this too, and it does the trick. Samsung has long been, in my opinion, the best in the business for to catering to Android users. Now, their wearables don't run Android or haven't run Android. They've run Tizen OS, which is Samsung's own internally developed operating system. And they've done a really great job of creating a watch that works seamlessly with, better with Samsung phones, because Samsung likes to do the Apple thing and create their ecosystem that ties in really well with their own hardware.
Ties in?
Dang it, I did it. That was totally unintentional. I meant to do that. So then, I guess the question that I've had is, all right, so with this news, then Samsung is moving away from Tizen to do this unified thing with Google. Obviously, they're getting something out of it. And I think at the end of the day, as good as Samsung's wearables have been, there's still a very large split between developers for its Tizen platform and developers for Android. And this is a way of kind of uniting them. So Samsung gets this like united developer effort. Google gets Samsung's prowess on what they did with their watches that made their smartwatches so successful over time. And Samsung has announced that there's an event coming up next month. What is it? It's August 11th, starting at 7 a.m. Pacific. I do know that I'm going to be doing live coverage of it Ron Richards, my co-host on All About Android, I just heard from him this morning. He wants to do the live coverage as well. So we're going to be doing live coverage of the Impact event. That's where we're going to really get to see the fruits of all of this. And the reason I'm even talking about this today is because Google made another announcement that ties into this. I'm just going to keep saying it now because it's like lodged in the recesses of my brain. And they have the new name for this OS. Are you ready for it, Mikah? Because it's going to blow your mind.
The new name for the joint OS?
For the joint OS. It was once called Wear OS. Do you know what it's called now?
Where?
Wear OS 3.
Oh,
sorry. Okay, there's not a whole lot to the name. Not mind-blowing. But they did release some extra details as far as like who could expect to see this update. Now, obviously, if you're buying new smartwatches in the future when this OS is a thing, which doesn't seem to be very far from now, you don't have anything to worry about. If you are in the market for a new smartwatch that is coming from Samsung, you're not going to have to wait very long because we're going to hear about it next month, and it's probably going to be the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. We've seen some leaks about this, and it's like a round face smartwatch with a rotating bezel, 3 different sizes. I feel like that's promising because so often with smartwatches, they come out, especially Android smartwatches, they come out in 2 sizes, big and bigger. Yeah. And they never really come out in the smaller sizes that I know Florence Ion on All About Android is always complaining about the fact that these watches are too damn big on her wrist. So that's promising. But kind of the bad news here is Google, and it really feels like Google's getting the bad news out of the way before the event. It's kind of like, let's push this out so that people forget about it next month when we're giving them good stuff. Is that some watches on the market, yes, will be getting an update to the new OS. But it's not going to happen until the second half of 2022. So if you have a smartwatch that's actually going to get updated, you're still going to have to wait more than a year to get there. So keep that in mind, and who knows how that hardware is going to last until then. We don't have a whole lot of, amazing examples of new software hitting old hardware and the performance being amazing. But hey, anything could happen. Google listed Mobvoi's TicWatch 3 Pro 3 GPS.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Oh, sorry.
What did you call it?
What's that?
I didn't understand what you said. Google's Shab.
Google announced a number of smartwatch devices that will get this update.
Okay.
Sorry, I should specify that. Mobvoi is the maker of a number of watches, the TicWatch brand. So TicWatch Pro 3 GPS.
Okay.
The TicWatch Pro 3. Woo. I started talking in tongues there.
I honestly was like, is this a different language? Mobvoi Watch 3.
So basically, all they really announced was that a bunch of TicWatches are going to get this update. But they also said Fossil Group's new generation of devices launching later this year. But that's not really... I don't know. I guess what I don't know there is, are those Fossil Group watches launching later this year with the regular Wear OS and then being updated to this new thing second half of next year? Still feels kind of weird.
This is the thing that people love about Android is also a downside to Android at some times because they have to try and figure out how to make this work on all of these different companies that are creating devices for this.
Yeah.
And so it becomes easy to see how Apple can refine on their idea of a wearable, given it's the OS and the hardware the same thing.
It's just the thing.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
I feel for Google and Wear OS 3 developers as they try to make this work on all these different devices with all of these different specs, and it's tough. So of course it's going to take time. And it's no surprise that they've yet to nail it on an all-encompassing wearable.
Yeah, well, I think what's been interesting is Wear OS in the past, since it became a thing, Google went into the Wear OS project, or whatever you want to call it, with a very specific mind towards not making it very customizable at all from a software perspective. I don't know if this was the reason that they did it, but my thoughts around it was that Android, very customizable, very different from manufacturer to manufacturer, what you get from a UI perspective and from the software and everything. You've got the core of Android, but then you've got all this customization that they do. And then you've got the big, the F word, fragmentation. And that could be at least a component of that. So I felt like when they came out with Wear OS, they were like, you know what? We don't even want to deal with that. So Wear OS is a single unified UI, and it's going to work this way on every single watch that is released. And the only true differentiator is the manufacturer, the hardware that they create for it and everything. And that was, it was a bet. And I think at the time I was like, well, that's really great. That's going to help with this whole fragmentation thing. In the end, it really made just a bunch of watches. If Google isn't doing Wear OS right to begin with,
right,
then it's kind of like, okay, great, but I don't really like what I'm using anyways. And they stopped updating it, and it had its own issues. This new effort is going to bring back more of that customization. So there's a little bit more there from the perspective of kind of refreshing or brand identity, or just kind of user experience being very catered to each device specifically. But that runs into what you're talking about, right? Anytime you bring in that customization, that kind of ability to change the look and feel and all the functionality and everything within the confines of that OS, it creates potential issues for releasing in a timely manner, system updates, that sort of stuff. And I'm speaking purely from examples that already exist in the past. It's not even conjecture. That just seems to happen a lot on Android devices. So it's not, out of the realm of possibility to expect that to happen with watches to some degree. Hopefully Google has that nailed, and I guess we'll find out. But so one thing that I think is really interesting here, though, is that of the devices that were announced that would be updated, none of them are Samsung devices. So you've got the best smartwatches catering to Android users, and the company that makes them in cahoots with Google making the future of Wear OS. But you've got none of their actual watches that most people have making the jump, at least at this point. Maybe Samsung will make an announcement at some point, but at this point, they aren't a part of this announcement from Google, which doesn't bode very well for anyone having a Samsung smartwatch right now, getting an update to the new thing.
They look at that and go, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
That's troubling.
And it also really just kind of shows, and Verge pointed this out, and it's totally true, now is a horrible time to buy an Android smartwatch. You don't want to buy one now. What's that?
I'm not being snarky. Was there a good time at one point, or are they saying like the future will be the time? Right now, it's not good.
Exactly. That. Based on what we know now from what Google is saying here, if you buy a smartwatch now that isn't on this list, you're taking a big risk that it will not be updated to the future of the wearable platform.
Got it.
And so you might be locked into whatever it is now. Maybe that's fine. But if you're buying a smartwatch hoping for expecting that it's going to get software updates down the line, at the most, you're taking the gamble, that you're just going to get security updates, because it's probably not going to update from a platform perspective, at least based on what Google is saying today. So not a whole lot of great news. Like I said, Google getting that out of the way, clearing the decks.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of like, you just clearly see their prioritization. And in that way, I do kind of feel bad for folks who work on hardware at Google, in particular, where they kind of like want the backing of the company for it all to come together. I realize these are Samsung watches, but when you've got like, how much money does Google make on making pixels versus how much it makes on its ad sales and this and that and the other? And you've got a big company that has lots of different revenue streams, and they focus heavily on some of the bigger streams of revenue. And you're going, don't forget about us.
Forget about it. But you're right. I mean, to that end, it's a pretty small portion for Google anyways.
So that's why they can push out and say, wait, it's going to be 2024 before you really want to buy a watch that works with Wear OS. And it's okay for them to do that because they've got revenue streams that are more important than that. Whereas, and I'm doing comparison for like in trying to understand why Apple Watch is so much farther ahead. Apple, in trying to release one every year, it's their whole focus.
It's theirs.
Need it to be,
Exactly. And so, they need it to succeed.
Exactly.
And Google really, it's not that Google doesn't want its own hardware to succeed. Of course it does, but it doesn't need it to succeed, because it has everybody else playing in that game too. I mean, we also have heard plenty of rumors and leaks and everything around a Google Pixel watch, which, in light of all this news, it makes sense that to a certain degree that we would probably hear about this at Google's hardware event in the fall. that we would, hopefully be given some sort of actual news on a Pixel Watch. I wouldn't be surprised now knowing about this OS and everything. But again, is that Google's, primary focus? They have the hardware division. Of course they want it to succeed, but it's never, I've never felt like it's the top tier of their priority.
Exactly.
Their top tier is creating a platform that everybody else wants to use so that they continue to get that fresh, sweet smelling data.
I love the smell of new data in the morning.
It's like opening a can of Folgers crystals. Maybe wrong analogy, but I'm sure you saw those ads. Anyways, that's all I got.
Oh wait, that's Maxwell.
Yeah, well, same difference though. They're always opening that can and going.
Yeah, snorting coffee.
Yeah, snorting coffee. Exactly. All right, but that's what I got. That's my story of the week. My Sato.
Your Sato.
Tech News Weekly, we do this show every Thursday at twit.tv/TNW. That's the place where if you go there, you just subscribe. It's easy to do so, and then you don't even have to think about it. The show delivers to you like magic in audio and video formats.
Also, if you'd like to get the shows ad-free, well, you should check out Club Twit. For $7 a month, you get access to every Twit show with no ads. You also get access to the exclusive Twit Plus bonus feed that has content you won't find anywhere else, before show, after show, under the show, over the show, through the show.
In between the show.
In between the in between two ferns, and everywhere in between. Anyway, and access to the members only Discord server, which is quite a fun place to be. There you can join us hosts, producers, and other Twit folks, as well as fellow Club Twit members, talking about all sorts of things and all sorts of channels. It's a lot of fun. If that sounds like something you'd like to check out, and if you'd like to join the club and join everybody else in the party, head to twit.tv/clubtwit. That's where you go to sign up. Also, if you want to follow me on social media, I am at Mikah Sargent on many a social media platform. Check out Smart Tech Today later today with Matthew Casanelli, and iOS Today tomorrow with Rosemary Orchard, the other shows I do here on the network. Jason Howell, what about you?
Oh, me? At Jason Howell on Twitter. I do All About Android, where I talk about things like the last 10 minutes of this show with my co-hosts Florence Ion and Ron Richards. And then, like I mentioned, do put it on your calendar. I think it's August 11th, I believe, is the August 11th, 7 a.m. Pacific. We'll be doing live coverage of the Samsung Unpacked event. There's going to be lots to cover and talk about in that event. These were the wearables I was talking about, the Z Fold 3, the Z Flip 5G. The invite actually is all about foldables. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to discuss. So if this intrigues you, then join us then at twit.tv/live. Big thanks to everyone in the studio, and I do mean everyone, because literally today it would be hard for me to name everyone because we've seen everyone in the studio. Masako, John, Burke, and Jerry was in here. I mean, I feel like everybody dropped by. So it's great to be back in the studio, and it's great to see you in person in the studio and be able to give you a fist bump because we've reached the end of Tech News Weekly. Bye-bye, everybody.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I want to tell you about my show, Hands on Photography, here on TWiT TV. Each and every week, Thursday that is, I like to sit down and share with you the best tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer. And it's not always about Photoshop. It's not always about just having the biggest and baddest and bestest camera. It can be the simplest of things, like leave your eye open when you're looking through the viewfinder. All of these simple tips can really help step your photography game up. So subscribe to the show today. That's twit.tv/hop. And I look forward to talking to you soon.